You don't need endless tutorials and years of work to make a video game. You don't need to learn code to make the game work, and you don't need to buy asset packs to make your game look good. I want to start this video by saying that I made my first game demo in just under 300 hours using primarily AI. I got AI to write all the code, I got AI to make all the images, and even the videos for my game. And I want to use this video to talk more about why and how I did this. The first disclaimer I want to give is that I have huge respect for game developers who spend thousands of hours and years to code and make good games. However, I believe that the AI approach might be better for a lot of people who have considered making video games but have had the massive mental block of having to learn code and go through tons of tutorials and such. So my process for making this game was a little sporadic. And originally, let me tell you more about how I got into this. So originally, when I was spending 2.5 years on my LinkedIn lead generation business, I was burnt out and I wanted a different avenue to simply go with my life and with the work I was working on. And eventually I came to the thought of, okay, well, if I like playing video games and I'm good at using AI and I've used AI to do some code for other automation I did before, could I use AI to help me create code for video games? And within about 20 to 30 hours of doing it, I was able to make my first incredibly ugly looking combat scene. And from there, I realized, what could I do more of? How could I do this more? So if I were to go and do all of this over again, here is what I would do. The first thing is that if you want to start using AI to do this, first brainstorm the game that you want to make. Brainstorm the game you want to make and identify a few things. Identify the type of game you'd like to play, why it would be enjoyable and unique to others, and just generally what you want it to look like, maybe any cool, unique parts about it, effects and such. And try and make that really cool and have fun doing it, right? Like my post, or at least my main idea with this all is making it a fun struggle. Like, enjoy the process of just brainstorming the sort of game you want to make. Now, I specifically wanted to talk about 2D games today because making 3D games or visuals with AI is not something I've done yet, and it's probably going to be far more difficult. So try and pick a 2D game idea and put something together of just a plan of the thing that you would like to do. The second thing is then working on your art style for the game. What do you want that to look like? Because when I was putting together my game, originally I was thinking of this very gritty parchment style sort of game with graphics. And I'll show a few images here. But my art style evolved at least 3 or 4 times when making it, which didn't help because I had to go back through and update images, character portraits multiple times until eventually I went from something which was very gritty and almost parchment drawn to a more ultra realistic and cinematic view. Now, I'm a lot happier with this. However, I would have saved tons of time and energy if I had just fixed this earlier. Now, when it comes to making the images and making the character portraits, depending on the type of game you're making, I obviously made this with AI. I made this with ChatGPT. Now, what I have is I've made a custom ChatGPT for myself, one which is responsible for making images and has all the relevant instructions on the art style I want to have, the detail I want it to have, and such, so that when I ask it to make a certain image, if it's a certain character I want in a cutscene, I'll drag and drop the relevant character in there so it's got context. And then from there, I'll make sure, for example, if it's a character portrait, I want it to be a vertical. If it's a cutscene, I want it to be landscape and such. And there's no straightforward way to do this other than to just simply give it a go and see what you get. That's the main thing. So that's pretty much what I did, just making the images and the art style. The third thing is then to make a small snippet Because I want you to bear in mind that obviously, because we're not learning how to code here, or at least because I didn't, you're very much in the dark in terms of what you need to do. So what I focused on is just focusing on making my first combat scene. Now, I didn't know how to use Unity at all, and for reference, I'm going to speak purely just using Unity for this video. I didn't know how to use it at all, and I literally had to take screenshots. Like for example, when I asked it, okay, well, how can I make a combat scene and such, and the code and the scripts I need to make and such. Like there were parts of it where it was saying, right, you now need to make this game object or something, and I literally said, what's a game object? Like, what are you talking about? Like show me where to do it and what to do it. And I'd take screenshots of my screen, and it would then say, okay, you need to go here, you need to do this. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And over time I began to learn what I needed to do. I began to learn where things were in Unity, how to use it, and because that's a whole new thing compared to code. And it was just putting things together and learning things as I go. Now, what I will say is when you are, for example, going back and forth with ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using, the AI is only as good as the context you can give it. If you're trying to link up and make certain things relevant to other scripts, you need to make sure that the AI you're using understands that. For example, if you have a character script and lots of code around, the character and such, and then you have something relating to, I don't know, a health bar script, you need to make sure that if those two are supposed to somewhat be relevant to each other and to affect one or the other, that the AI has both of those scripts so it knows what you have and what is then like for you to make, or at least what it then needs to make for you. And this was the really and probably the most complicated part of the process, where if you don't give it the context relevant, it's going to start making things you already have, going off and making little snippet and patch ups for the problem you're trying to face, and so on and so forth. So you need to be really conscious of that. And the last thing I will say is you will get errors at the bottom. You just will. And I still get them to this day. When you get them, all I simply do is I will literally copy and paste all of them. So usually that's clicking the very bottom one and the very top one with like a shift click, I believe it is, to highlight all of them. I'll copy all of them, Control C. I'll paste them all in, and then I will aim to copy and paste all of the relevant scripts that it's referring to, or one that it could be referring to, and basically just say, right, what's going on here? When it then tells me what's going on, I then give it the relevant script and say, can you fully update the scripts with the changes in them? That's it. And everything else is a matter of patience and consistency. Patience is the main one, because there are times where things take a while. There are times where I've spent way too long on something which should have been done fairly quickly. And I'm sure other game developers can probably understand that, but obviously I understand this is very different. And that is generally the process. Now, I could go on and go down to the really specifics, but I don't want to feel like this is some other just really in-depth tutorial. I want people to be able to take this and to go and play around and have fun and try and figure it out. Try and figure out, the game you want to make, putting together like certain things. And it's just figuring that out, because that, like, if you're watching this video in the hope that you can just make a game super easily, that's not necessarily the case. And although, yeah, don't get me wrong, I cut out a lot of time which I would have had to spend, learning loads of code. So again, tons of respect for developers who learn loads of code and such. However, it's not necessarily straightforward, and each thing you work on, you're choosing to have different problems to deal with. So if this is of interest to you, then I think the first thing I'd say is just try and go step by step with the approach. If you're interested in putting together your own game, like I said before, try and brainstorm the concept of the game you want to make. Ideally make it 2D, because making images and stuff in 3D just is going to be a bit complicated. Make your game 2D and have a brainstorm idea. figure out the art style, what you want that to look like. Honestly, with that, you could literally just get AI or ChatGPT to make you some different varying images based on the prompts you give it to figure out the sort of thing you're looking for. I guess as well, you also want to figure out the type of game you want to make. The game I'm making at the moment is a more of a story-rich strategy game. Story-rich, there's a lot of stuff I'm sort of making and putting into that, so that's a whole new question. And then it is a matter of being able to make your first small snippet. And it is just simply trial and error at this point as well. But this approach, although it does seem a bit in the dark, if you can be patient enough with it, you're going to be able to get a lot quicker through it than a lot of people who are going down the coding route are. So let me know your thoughts on this video, if you would go and actually make your own video game and what that would look like. And yeah, I'll catch you soon.